Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Abhishek Rastogi, partner at Khetan and Company and advocate at Supreme Court and various high courts, joining in. Welcome to the show, Abhishek. A pleasure to speak to you as well and connect with you after a really long time. Abhishek, with the kind of unprecedented times that we've seen on the back of COVID, a lot of support from the government was something that was anticipated. It has come in various forms of stimulus packages, in forms of various rate cuts and moratoriums that have been provided by the government. However, now all eyes are on what the government would actually announce in budget 2021, taking the last 12 months into consideration. Overall, what is your expectation?
See, I think overall expectation is that the government would move in a direction so that there is a balance between the revenue collection and the benefit to the industries. So, for instance, if rate rationalization has to happen both on the direct tax side and the indirect tax side, this is the right time. The number crunching will have to be done, the subsumation of rates into the lesser number of rates for GST, the reduction of the rates for individuals for some sectors. I think that's the key which people are looking for at this time. If you see the year 2020, I would say that 2020 was a year of grit and resilience. But I think if we see 2021, that would be the year of technological advancement and the new ways of doing business. So I think from that perspective, the government should think in this budget how technology advancement can happen in various sectors, how people can do businesses, what support can be given to MSME sector. I think that's the key. And I think I am very optimistic that this government should move in that direction.
Right. When you mentioned about the revenue shortfall as well, now clearly they've said that a special window could be provided to the states in consultation with the RBI at a reasonable interest rate for borrowing of almost 1.1 lakh crores. And that's what the center is looking to borrow with regards to meet the shortfall. Now, clearly they had given a couple of options at that point in time as well, stating that the amount could be repaid after 5 years ending 2022 from the cess collection, and the GST panel had increased the borrowing limit to 1.1 lakh crores, and the second option was to borrow the entire 2.35 lakh crore shortfall under the special window.
Yeah.
Which according to you was the best option?
I think there is no straight answer to that. All of the states will have to look into the current requirements, the long-term plan, and also most of the states would look that for what tenure is the remaining part of their government left. So I think basis that there is no clear-cut answer, while the short-term need of funds could be the solution for some states, while other states may would want to defer it for by a couple of years. So from that perspective, I think it will be very, very individualistic decision of these states.
Right. And clearly, when you talk about budget 2021, it's actually coming out at a time when the economy is actually in a technical recession. It's actually threatened the government's ambitious plan of making India a $5 trillion economy by over the next couple of years. Taking this into consideration, anything you think that the government needs to do right and announce right in the budget?
So I think a couple of very, very important points. First is the rate rationalization. The government must think of rate rationalization in the indirect tax regime. Uh,
Hmm.
the highest tax bracket of 28%, even for demerit goods, is not a good sign for any economy. There could be some cesses on some products, but that's not the right approach. So I think, especially the convergence of the 12% rate and the 18% rate has to happen somewhere at 16% or probably at 15%. So that should be the first and the fourth step which this budget should address. The policy of the government should be very, very clear that there should be moderation of the tax rate and broadening of the tax base. Now, if that broadening of the tax base has to happen, a lot of these exemptions which are being given today should be removed. They should come to a lower tax bracket of 5% and so on and so forth. And probably a lot of these products, the goods and the services which are at the rate of 5%, may move ahead to the higher tax bracket rate. So I think rate rationalization is very, very important as far as the indirect taxes are concerned. Now, similarly, if you see the direct tax pattern, today partnership firms are taxed at 30%. The corporate tax rate is as less as 18% to 20 to 25%. And for an individual, the rate may vary from exemption to 33%. So I think if the benefit has to go, it should go to all. Why should partnership firms be taxed at a higher rate of 30%? Because a lot of these MSMEs contribute significantly to the government exchequer. So I think from that perspective, the rate rationalization, not only with respect to the indirect tax supplies, but also with respect to a lot of these different brackets, so as to say, for the direct tax purposes, should happen. So I think one, of course, is how the government would address this issue of rate rationalization. That is one. One, and the second most important point is with respect to inclusion of oil within the GST gamut. Now, we've been talking about it for last several years now. Oil and gas has not been part of GST. It's high time. There is not only tax cascading onto that, but also, so alcoholic liquor, we know for a fact, cannot come into the GST regime because of the constitutional amendment which requires it, and because of a specific reason why these have been excluded from GST. But I think GST Council, along with the central government and all of these state governments, by way of unanimous decision, should now reach the conclusion how and what to include within the GST. Out of those 5 products which are within, which are outside the GST purview, I think it will not be a good idea to include that in piecemeal. There'll be a lot of problems. There'll be a lot of detailing required and so on and so forth. At one blow, all of it has to come within the GST regime. So I think those two things, I'm looking very optimistically that the government will move in that direction.
Absolutely. And I think, with regards to GST as well, with multiple GST rates, it's only leading to complexities in compliance and tax structure. And it's really not making India optically tax friendly and competitive globally as well. Because the entire idea why GST was introduced with the theory of one nation, one tax. Now, talking about GST itself, Abhishek, another aspect is when you talk about thin goods, number one, there is already a 28% tax on it.
Plus cesses.
And a 12% cess, absolutely, that goes on to almost 40%. Now, a lot of times the conversation that comes up is, should the cess be on the MRP? Because it's usually MRP driven products. Or should always the cess amount be a percentage of the tax amount? Because that's usually the way it's calculated. Do you think that's something which needs to be reconsidered as well?
My view is completely different, Hiral, and I may be completely wrong here, but my view is that the Constitution today provides that any cess has to be levied only in circumstances where there is a natural calamity or disaster. Now, most of these cesses, if we talk today, have been implemented from the date of the GST implementation and before this COVID situation. My question is that what was the need to impose these cesses? Now, by inclusion of these cesses, we are going back to the erstwhile regime that there are multiple layers of taxes. There is no distinction between various taxes and so on and so forth. So I think from that perspective, the objective of GST was very clear that we want to reduce the number of taxes. We want to reduce the cesses and so on and so forth. So I think from that perspective, cess is not a good idea at all. I understand that in certain circumstances, cess would give additional revenue to the government. But I think rather than imposing cesses, it would always be better to do rate rationalization on certain products and tax them at a higher rate so that there is less of ambiguity, classification disputes are less, and the government is able to reach out to its revenue number.
Right. And I think now we're already talking about introducing a new COVID-19 cess for the time being. Yeah. How do you think taxpayers are going to really react to it?
No, I think before the taxpayers' reaction, there'll be a lot of big companies who would want a judicial review of that cess as well. And we have seen in the past. Now, if this cess is completely linked to the natural disaster, now, is this the right time to implement that cess? The question is that we have gone through this pandemic already now. And if that's the situation, would the constitutional provisions allow the government to impose this cess as of now? So I think, first of all, is the constitutional validity of this cess. And of course, as far as the ultimate consumer is concerned, they will not be in a very, very happy situation because this cess would come on all suppliers generally. There will not be any exception to it. So effectively, what happens is that the rate of all of these supplies go up. So that will not be very well taken for sure.
Right. And overall, apart from this, another aspect that we've been looking at right now is with the new e-invoicing regime that has come in under GST. Do you think that's something which is rational and could be, I mean, because that's something which probably moves us away from the ease of doing business kind of policies?
So I think my view on e-invoicing is that e-invoicing, a great initiative. The best thing about the e-invoicing which has happened is that this has now been implemented in piecemeal. So the largest bracket of companies come within the gamut of e-invoicing mandatory requirements first of all. Then the water gets tested and then gets rolled out for the next level of companies. So I think stage by stage implementation was a brilliant idea. E-invoicing in itself is very good. It tracks a lot of these systematic issues. But the moot point which remains is then when it goes to the MSME sector and which contributes significant amount of money to the GDP as an aggregate, then the point remains is that are we prepared in terms of infrastructure? Are we prepared in terms of resources? Is my cost of doing business going up? If these are like mid-size exporters and they have this requirement of e-invoicing and so many appliances, and they are competing globally. So will that cost add to my competitive advantage? I think all of that will come into play as well.
Right. And again, on the rationalization of taxes front, which sectors, according to you, actually qualify for a rate cut? Because you have real estate also, which is vouching for the same. You have some of the FMCG players who are also vouching for the same. So, which sectors, according to you, would qualify for a rate cut in terms of GST? And which sectors, according to you, probably could see a increase coming in?
So I think when we talk about certain specific sectors such as real estate, today they have options of being taxed at either 5% or 12% with and without credits. Similarly, restaurants, etc., food and beverages, they have some relaxations of opting for two different rates, 5% and 12% with and without credits. So I think one is first to address the question that whether two rates should be given for the same supply of services with restriction of credit. That should be the first point of determination whether that's the correct approach. Yes, I think in terms of the rate reduction, 12% rate can actually go to a higher bracket rate. So most of these supplies under 12% should go to the rate which converges at 16%. So even there'll be some relaxation for a lot of these supplies which are today taxed at 18% because convergence of the rate happens at 16%. So on papers, it will give a good perception to the ultimate consumer. Plus, I think in terms of the revenue number perspective, there will not be any loss because that would be the revenue neutral rate for convergence. So I think 16% is, what should happen. And of course, some of these services, the goods which are today at 5% can go to 16%. So that can happen as well.
Just give me a
You are on mute, Hiral. You are on mute.
Ma'am,
Can you
unmute.
hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Right. So overall, from here on, when we talk about the real estate sector as well, any other sectors which you think qualify for a rate cut according to you?
I don't have any specific sector in mind, but I'm looking more of a rate rationalization for 12% and the 18%. And of course, whatever goods are there under 28% may continue for some time under 28%. Only some luxurious services or goods could go from 18% to 28% for some time.
Hmm. Okay. And apart from this, if you talk about GST related queries as well right now, we've spoken about the ease of doing business. We've spoken about where rationalization goes. Another aspect right now is, the tax on dividend income. What's your view on it? Because currently no deduction in taxable income is allowed against dividend income except
No,
interest.
we know for a fact that this dividend distribution tax was abolished, which means that now this income becomes taxable in the hands of the individual. So, for instance, what is this dividend? This dividend is basically the amount of money which is left after the taxes have been paid. Now, in any case, this is like a post tax income which gets distributed. Now, if there is no
Mm,
dividend distribution tax and it becomes taxable in the hands of the individuals, the situation could be considered to the share of a partner in a partnership firm, where the partnership firm, after all of these taxes have been paid, the share which remains is being distributed to the partners. Now, instead of the partnership firm, here the companies have shareholders, and the dividend gets distributed in the ratio of the shares which they hold. So, from that perspective, I am not able to understand that is it not leading to a situation wherein there is a double taxation, because this entire
mm,
amount has already been subject to tax. This is the amount which has been left for distribution after tax has been paid. So while abolition of dividend distribution tax was a good move, taxing it in the hands of the individuals, and this may go as high as 30%, because if the individual is in the tax bracket of 30%, then the entire dividend gets taxed at 30%. Yes, if the
mm.
dividend distribution tax would have been paid, that would have been much lesser than 30% rate. So I think from that perspective, uh, the government needs to have a serious look into this issue so that the market also gets some benefit out of these initiatives.
Absolutely. And with this, another sector or another segment of business on the retail front are the e-commerce platforms. There is a lot of clarity we know which is awaited on the equalization levy, which is applicable to e-commerce goods and services. Currently, I think a 2% is what is charged on the money that is received. Do you think a change on that front is required as well?
See, I think when we talk about the equalization levy, in the recent past, we have already seen a lot of these retrospective amendments, the bilateral investment treaties, etc., being challenged. Now, even if we see the equalization levy, there is already a discussion which is going in US and some several other countries that levy of this equalization levy by India, is this the right approach to tax these e-commerce transactions? Now, you call it a Google tax or whatever form of tax you call it, but at the end of the day, this is not a tax on income. This is
Mm,
a tax on revenue. Now, globally, if you see, this tax may not be acceptable. So, from that
mm,
perspective, I think the government needs to be very, very clear from various different perspectives, because today we were talking about the global perspective. We have already seen that some of these retrospective amendments, how India has lost in a couple of big matters in international arbitration. So all of these bilateral investment treaties, there need to be a policy so that the global perception is not against doing business in India. And we have already seen that India today is in discussion of early harvest trade deals with the US. And this is ahead of the comprehensive foreign trade agreements. So I,
mm,
on one side, if we want to be very proactive, we want to enter into early harvest trade deals. we want to move ahead of these foreign trade agreements with certain nations, I think it is equally important that the global perspective is also managed as far as the imposition of taxes within the country is concerned. So whether it is with respect to the retrospective amendment, and especially in light of the bilateral trade agreements, or with respect to equalization levy, which is very, very closely watched globally, I think India has a very, very important role to play, because it should not be the perception globally that India is just interested in collecting taxes.
Hmm.
Now, similarly, when we talk about these bilateral investment agreements, the best way is to have some standard agreements in such a way so that these are watertight agreements. What
Correct.
happens is that after 10 years, after a company has invested, if there is litigation and it goes to international forum and there you lose, then I think the entire perception changes. So I think we should have very, very clear cut policy. We should have very, very watertight agreements so as to ensure that what we are actually putting in these bilateral trade agreements. And of course, if we want to proactively enter into these trade agreements or early harvest deals, we should be very, very careful of a lot of these things, such as equalization levy.
Right. So then would you agree that the dividend income for FIs is something that needs to be rationalized and made flat as well? Because to my knowledge, they're either taxable at a flat rate of 20% or a rate that is defined under the applicable tax treaty, whichever is beneficial. Do you think, what's your view on that? Because clearly, this current point in time, we do need a lot of FI investments that need to come into the country.
So I think it has to be very, very clear that there should not be any double taxation on this distribution. That goes without saying. It should be with the best global international practices. So if the investment is happening from the US or the UK into India, what are their tax structure? We
Mhm.
need to look into that as well. So, and I think it is a two-way taxation system. So if we have to tax these global incomes, we need to be very, very sure about the extraterritorial jurisdiction, because even the Constitution of India provides that you could not levy taxes by imposing extraterritorial jurisdiction. So I think from that perspective of constitutionality, one has to be clear. With respect to double taxation, one has to be clear. And with respect to the entire global perspective and how these incomes or the revenue streams are treated globally, India should be at par with all of those global policies.
Right. And then what's your view with regards to where the personal taxes go? Anything that, according to you, that the government should be considering?
I think personal taxes, that's always the moot point of discussion. I'm sure that the government will be looking for some relaxations by increasing monetary limits for the basic threshold exemption and the lower tax rate. That should happen. But I think my view also is that even the highest tax rate, the surcharges on income of more than 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 5 crores, I think that also needs to be seen, because you cannot levy lot of high surcharges or additional taxes on people who are earning high income, because we always keep on talking about people who are falling within that bracket of 3 lakhs to 10 lakhs. But what about those people who are falling above 1 crore? They are also significantly contributing to the government exchequer. There has to be right level of motivation even for them to work. So for instance, if my income today is taxed at 50% or almost
Mm.
50%, I will have very less motivation to expand my business. Now, if I don't expand my business, there'll be less of employment generation. So if the employment generation gets reduced, then there'll be lesser of people in my organization in that income bracket of 10 to 20 lakhs. So I think from the overall perspective, if the economy has to move, there has to be a balance in taxing right people, broadening the tax base, and moderate the tax rate.
Right. And then very lastly, Abhishek, let me come back to GST as well. A couple of sectors that were catching my eye right now was whether demanding the healthcare sector. Now, they don't see availability of input tax credit. They are seeking reduction in GST rates, especially when it comes to clinical trials, or even for that matter, when you talk about tourism and hospitality. Do you think these are sectors which have been ruling under pressure? However, they are revenue providers as well, should probably see a GST exempt or something for the next couple of months, only on a special basis, taking COVID into consideration.
So, Hiral, if you see the healthcare sector, if you see
Mhm.
the education sector, today, a lot of these supplies by these sectors are exempt, right? But what happens is that the inverted duty structure refund. So, for example, if I'm taxed at 5%,
Hmm.
get a lot of those credits to use either towards that 5%. And if I'm not able to use that credit, I get refund of that money.
Hmm.
I'm into a priority sector, which is an education sector and the health sector, then I do not get any refund because I am exempted.
Correct.
Already challenged this provision in various courts for education sector, for health sector, and where these exempted supplies are there, because the inverted duty structure refund cannot be restricted to those sectors which are exempted. So I think apart from that, a lot of these sectors, including the health sector, the real estate sector, are also facing lot of ITC credit restriction under section 17(5). Now, a lot of these restrictions have been challenged by me in different courts for different reasons. Because if I am constructing business building which I'm using for hotel, then why the cost of the construction and the taxes which are paid to construct that building should be denied to me? Because ultimately, hotel services are nothing but the taxable services under the GST, and these could be even taxed at a higher rate depending on the level of hotel which I am preparing. Similarly, is the situation with the healthcare services. If you are constructing a hospital, the cost of constructing that hospital, a lot of this restriction comes into play, and which has been challenged. So I think they have the right reason to cry and take the point to the government that the benefit of the inverted duty structure refund should be eligible to them as well.
Absolutely, yeah, because there are a lot of sectors, especially with regards to textile, railways, fertilizers, where a refund arises, you know, say when the tax rate on the outward supplies are lower than the rates on the inward supplies, and that's leading to perpetual accumulation of the input tax credit, and the working capital somewhere is getting blocked for these sectors as well. So I think yes, that's something which needs to be relevant from here on. And in fact, I don't know if you've heard of this. Malaysia had provided exemption to hotel accommodation from service tax for 6 months. I think even United Kingdom came out with something called as Eat Out to help out.
Yeah,
Uh, that's something which encouraged consumption as well. Do you
yeah.
think India as a nation will be capable, or do you think we have the capability to, encourage such schemes?
I think we should very, very pragmatically look at these schemes, because if you see the entire travel sector or the hotel industry, they are generating employment to a very large extent. So that rotation of money happens, the income gets generated. It is not only the revenue of that entity or the hotel, but the employment which it generates will add significantly in the overall development of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be looked into. And I think that also you mentioned about the working capital. There are a lot of these foreign trade agreements, advance authorization schemes, which have been challenged. This new ROTTEP scheme, the remission of duties scheme, is coming in place instead of the MEIS. And a lot of these, while these initiatives have been taken to give benefits of the working capital to the Indian exporters, there are certain restrictions which have been placed into these schemes. So I think that needs to be looked into as well. While giving this ROTTEP benefit, whether advance authorization restriction should actually be made applicable. Because we have seen from 2017 till date, there have been a lot of these disputes which have gone to the court with respect to advance authorization. And now if the new scheme of ROTTEP is coming, then whether the working capital benefit, which is the need of the hour for the Indian exporters, should that be restricted for advance authorization license holders? I think that needs to be looked into as well.
Right. And Abhishek, very lastly, apart from the things we've discussed, anything that we've missed out that we should be, vigilantly watching out for on the taxation front from the budget?
I think decriminalization of taxes. We
Hmm.
have seen a lot of arrests. I have some data which says that some 7, 8,000 arrests happens every year, which is not a good sign. We are moving towards decriminalization now. There are provisions in the GST regime to block credits, which has also been in some cases not used prudently. We must use blockage of these credits in a very, very rightful manner. There is also a requirement that at least 1% of the tax on the output side will be paid in cash. If that gets implemented, then I think there is no reason for people to be arrested. The interest of the GST authorities should lie in collecting revenue rather than putting people behind bars. And even when these people are taken in judicial custody, more or less nothing happens for 60 days when they are in judicial custody till the time bail in default happens. So I think decriminalization of these acts should happen so that it doesn't become a trauma. And of course, the government has the right to collect revenue, but in the right manner.
Absolutely. I think that's something which needs to be considered as well. Thank you, Abhishek, so much for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to speak to you. Great insights. And looking forward to, such announcements from Budget 2021 as well. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
Yeah,
Stay safe and hoping to speak to you soon again once the announcements do come in. Thank you so much.
sure. Thank you, Hira.
And stay safe.
Thanks.